Okay, good morning, everyone. We have our last presenter just joining right now. So let me just go ahead and start up with some introductions and a little bit of information about today's webinar. So today's webinar is about the Web Data Connector. This is a feature that was released in version 9.0 of Tableau, and many of the members of the community got to kind of explore it with the beta and have been building their own web data connectors ever since the time of the beta, and have continued to build new connectors since the 9.0 release. We had several of the Zen Masters who I talked to at TC and right before that were interested in sharing information about the Web Data Connector, how to create your own, and just kind of doing a deeper dive into exploring this new capability in Tableau. With that said, the panelists today that we have joining are Craig Bloodworth, Robert Rouse, Tamas Foldi, and let me just do a little introduction for each. Craig Bloodworth. Craig developed his Tableau publishing skills through the analysis of public data sets, downloading Excel reports and poorly structured CSV files by the bucket load. Through working with Guardian's data blog, he perfected the art of creating clean, intuitive dashboards to be easily understood by people who had no previous experience of BI, while also telling an interesting data discovery story. Currently, he's pursuing the goal of turning as many people onto Tableau as possible. He does this through his professional work with the Information Lab and development tools such as the Google Chrome extension for Tableau Server. He also launched the online Tableau mapping repository at tableumapping.bi, a great tool for those of us who work here in the support organization as well. Next, we have Robert Rouse. Robert's passion for data has been a constant theme while serving as an Air Force officer, an engineer in campus ministry, and now as an analytics consultant for Interworks. Upon discovering Tableau in 2010, he saw an exciting opportunity to apply it to his project management role and his collection of biblical metadata. His appetite for ever larger data sets and complex analysis led him to pursue a career helping people solve tough business problems. And when Robert hears this can't be done, he takes a personal challenge to make it happen. He enjoys leading people out of their comfort zone into a world of new possibilities for understanding their data. And his Twitter handle there at Interworks. And then Tamas Foldi. Tamas has, during the daytime, he's the owner of Star Schema, co-founder and CTO of Star Schema, there we go. And Tamas Foldi leads an army of 100+ big data and data viz consultants, making Star Schema a top-notch worldwide DevOps provider, focusing on large deployments and cutting-edge custom-made solutions. He never leaves the work field. He's always ready to help his teams to crunch and refine petabytes of data across every continent every day. As the sun goes down, Tamas becomes a Tableau rebel at heart, constantly pushing the limits of Tableau capabilities and helping newcomer developers using the server APIs. He's notorious for thinking out of the box and delivering extreme business value using unique and unconquered solutions. And he does what others rarely do these days. He hacks fun into Tableau. When not fighting bits and bytes, he relaxes with his family, teaches functional programming, rides his longboard in the office, and not to mention he's a heavyweight Xbox FIFA warrior too. So that's our group today, and we're going to start off this morning with Robert Rouse. So Robert, let me go ahead and just pass over the control of presentation skills to you. There you go. And I'll unmute you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. So, as you said, I'm Robert Rouse, analytics consultant with Interworks, one of this year's Zen Masters. Just to go over a few of the things we're going to do today, we're going to start off just talking about what is a web data connector. What does it look like? How do you use it? This is for people that may have never seen or used the web data connector before. Since it is a new feature, there may be many of you on the call in that category. So we're going to cover that. And then we're going to get into code concepts, how to write your own, and go even more advanced than that. Craig Bloodworth and Tamas Foldi, who together have written the majority of web data connectors and frameworks that, that help you build those. So we're going to go pretty fast. We've got a lot to cover in an hour, so I hope everybody is strapped in. What I'm going to do, just to start off with, is show you what does it look like. How do I go about connecting to web data? What is this actually functioning as in Tableau? So the way that we start getting any data, obviously, is just connect to it. And it's going to be under servers. It's going to be under more servers or a web data connector if you've used it before. What this is actually bringing up is a web browser. It's a web browser that's hooked into Tableau Desktop that can send web data to a Tableau data extract that belongs with your workload. So sort of similar to what's happening with Google Analytics. It's going out, it's pulling web data, it's making a copy of that and storing it locally. So the first thing to know there then is that it's not a live connection. If things are changing out on the web, I have to refresh the extract. It's simply a copy of what's out there. Now, since this is a web browser, it asks you for your web data connector URL. I've seen some people at first who are trying to understand what this is, think, well, you know, maybe I just want to go to Google or I want to go to IKEA or some website where I want to get data and just type that URL in here. That's not really what it does. It needs to go out and find a web page that has been specifically programmed to get data through some kind of web service and structure that for the Tableau extract. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today is how that process works. Now, so if you're using this for the first time, you're probably not going to have anything in this recent connectors list. So all you're presented with is a blank box. And you think, well, how do I find web data connectors that I might want to use? The way that you do that today is out here on Tableau's website. If you go to tableau.com/web-data-connector, you're going to get to this page. It gives you a few helpful links. The first place to start off with, if you want to build one, is just start building web data connectors. That'll bring you to this page. Now, what's there is that you'll find there are some samples that come with the software development kit that Tableau provides to show you how you can get started with the code on your own. But then there are also web data connectors that have been created by our community. You can see Craig's name next to a bunch of these. I've created one. And there's actually a whole thread of just the connectors that people have made available publicly for you to use. And that list is updated regularly on the Tableau community. I think the easiest way to find it is either bookmark this page or, you know, right from this page, you'll go to Start Building Web Data Connectors and just kind of follow the threads through there. The other thing to know about just this whole community page for web data connectors, if I'm just on this page to start building web data connectors, this is good. It gives me the documentation, the tutorial, some references, things like that. But in fact, if you notice, this is actually a whole section of the community for web data connectors. So if I go to that link right here, this gives me just a better laid out page that has, you know, video for how to use it, tutorials, downloads, documentation, all of that sort of thing. And of course, since it's the community, if you have questions about it, this is the place to go. So with that said, I want to talk about a couple of different users that might be interested in connecting to web data. One is just your blogger or your data journalist or your hobbyist that has Tableau Desktop or maybe even Tableau Public. You want to get web data just for kind of a personal interest. You may not be a developer. You like Tableau because you don't really want to code to create visualizations, and so you don't really want to code to go out and get web data. That's where your community connectors are going to really help. So that's one person that's going to want web data. The other section of people are those that do want to code, do want to get something more advanced, more specific. These might be large enterprises, corporations, nonprofit organizations, people like that want to gather up data from around the web and do something more customized, more routine, more automated, and they have Tableau server and they want to make that available to a lot of people, things like that. We're going to cover that in a little bit of depth as well as we go on. So just starting from square one, what I wanted to do is demonstrate the one that I built, which uses import.io. If you're not familiar with import.io, let me just pull up their website here real quick. This is a service that takes, like it advertises, basically a web page that has data on it in some kind of structure, but it's not necessarily rows and columns, something that you would recognize as a data table, and turns it into something that you can use. So for their example is just, all right, I'm going to IKEA and I'm looking for chairs. Well, on the actual IKEA website, if I were to take this URL for you and show you what it looks like, this is what it looks like. Yes, it's a list and it's got some data, but it doesn't look like something that I can just cut and paste into Tableau or a spreadsheet. So import.io is kind of structuring that data for me. And there's a whole lot more that this service can do. I don't want to spend our time talking about that here. What I do want to talk about is how to use this service inside of Tableau to get a web page, structure the data, and get it right into an extract. So I'm going to go to my recent connectors, and this is the connector that you can find back on that community page, right? If you're looking at list of community-created web data connectors, you can just copy that link address and put that right here in this box. And that's actually going to, looks like that's probably the wrong page. So the URL for it, if you want to look here, is connectors.toc.interworks.com/import.io. And if you just type in that portion of it, it'll take you to this page. Now what it's asking me for is the URL of a list page. It can be any web page with a list of data on it. So the example that I wanted to use here was just the We the People website for petitions that people have out there for the U.S. government. Because there's some interesting things on here. These are popular petitions that are out there and how many people have signed it. And you can see again that this is something that's structured in a web format, but it's not structured in a format that I can cut and paste into a CSV. So if I take this URL, just copy that right over here, and I'll paste that in. I hit extract, and it's just going to go out and get the title of that web page and assign that title as my data source. It looks like I'm having a little bit of difficulty here. Let me try this one more time. Interesting. I'll go ahead and restart Tableau and see if we can work through this. What it does is it goes out to a web page, and we'll get the title of it, and it'll do some other things that we've programmed in there. Let's see, web data connector. I need 9.1. Okay, well, it looks like it's not going to work for me, but I'll explain what is going on rather than demonstrate it. So I'm going to type in a URL there. It's going to structure it and put it into a Tableau extract for me. Similarly, if I want to use a saved import.io data source, I can click there. And this is something for more advanced users. If you have something that you've trained it a little more about the structure of a web page and you've created a data set, and saved it in import.io that you want to use that custom extractor, I can just go over here to Export, Simple API Integration, copy this text here, and paste it in here. And it doesn't look like it's going to work for me today, but we'll give it another try just for fun. Okay, So that one worked. It might have just been the web page that I was using, but you can see all that does is it gives me the name that I had saved it as in import IO, and then I can use it from here, just like any other Tableau extract. Now, the other thing to know is that because it's web data, if that web data changes, like I mentioned, it's not a live connection, but I can refresh that data very simply, just like I refresh any other extract. Just right-click, extract, refresh. And when I hit refresh in Tableau Desktop, it is going to go out and get the new data as it exists on the web today. Now, that's the process for refreshing in Tableau Desktop. There's a different process for refreshing in Tableau Server. This is for that other user that I was talking about that is maybe a larger organization that wants this web data to be available to them, and they don't want desktop people to have to go in and refresh the extract to get new information. They want to schedule that on Tableau Server. Well, to do that, the refresh process doesn't really work the same way that we might be accustomed to in Tableau Desktop, which is just I publish the workbook and I schedule an extract refresh and I'm done. There's actually an additional step that you have to do to set up that source on your Tableau server. And that's all listed out here, actually under the server admin guide. It talks about web data connectors and on Tableau Server and all of the considerations there. This is the part where I sort of knock on the desk and say, read the manual, because this is important for anybody that's trying to do this in a server environment. Because if you think about it, this connector is allowing a website out there in the wild to go and write data to your Tableau environment. And that's a security issue. If Tableau Server doesn't know to trust that website can do some bad things to your data repository. So in order to help make sure that doesn't happen, you do have to go through a process to tell Tableau Server, yes, I trust this web data connector. In fact, here it is. I have to import it to the server using the command and process that it lists out here in the server admin guide. So read that if you want to refresh data on a server side, and know that it is a different process. This is something that you have to do as a server admin to enable data refreshes for web data connectors on that side. Okay, so I've demoed just the import IO connector, and I want to talk about something else that deals with data refreshes. What I did here when I extracted and refreshed this extract, it didn't ask me to do anything. It didn't ask me for credentials because I didn't have to log in. Import IO is just going out to the web, unauthenticated websites, things like that. That's really just all public information. So there's no authentication process, and I can just refresh all day long anytime that I want. But there's a different use case that you're going to run into a lot with web data, and that's things that you do have to log into. So what I wanted to show you is one that I've been experimenting with a little bit lately. It's t.blockspring.com. Blockspring is a really cool service that goes out and gets just a whole lot of cool web services and brings them together into Excel, CSV, and now just very recently into the Tableau Web Data Connector. So now I'm going to sign into Blockspring, just give it my Google account information. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because authenticated connectors are a little bit different. There are certain types of authentication that Tableau will remember your credentials if the web data connector is designed to do that. Or there are token-based authentication, such as OData, that those tokens expire after a while. So if I were to try to refresh the extract, it would say, well, sorry, username, password incorrect, token expired, something of that nature to tell you, I can't log in and refresh this extract. That's something else to be aware of with authenticated web data connectors. Depending on how it's built and depending on the type of authentication, you may or may not have to log in again every time that you want to get new data. The other reason I wanted to show you this Blockspring connector is, again, for those folks that just want to get some web data and it's kind of for personal use, and you want something in particular, but you don't want to have to write code to do it. Blockspring has written that code for a whole lot of different services, and this is a great way to just say, you know, I wonder if I can connect to, oh, Glassdoor. Yes, I can. My Google Calendar. Yep. GitHub, Import.io, all kinds of just fantastic services. Slack is one that I've been using a lot lately, and I can get Twitter. So let's just see how the Twitter one works. I'm already connected to my Twitter account because I've used this before. And if I just want to get my timeline, or you know what, let's search for tweets that have the data15 hashtag. We're coming right off the heels of that, and there's probably still some things out there with that hashtag. So I can even choose some optional parameters. Maybe I just want the popular ones. When I run that, it's going to show me a preview of what kind of data that I'm going to get, and I'll just import this right to Tableau. I wanted to show you that service because it's something that just is really wide-ranging and can be very, very useful to you with all of the services that they've already built for you. And once this comes in, there it is, and that's all of my Twitter data. So that's what I wanted to show you in Tableau, just as by way of setting the stage for what a web data connector is. I showed you on this community space that you can download the SDK. This is how you get started with writing code. And so if you fill out your information, register, say, yes, I agree to all these terms and things like that, you'll get a package of files with all of these pre-built Tableau connectors. So if I go to the Tableau examples, these are the ones that Tableau has built and made available to say, here's how to get started in writing your own if there's not one already out there that you can use to get the data that you want. And so with that, the person that I think that's built more of those and made them, or at least publicly available ones, than anyone else I know, is going to be Craig Bloodworth. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to him to talk a little bit more about writing your own. So let's see, Patrick, I might need your help in switching this over to Craig as the presenter.
Yep, I'm doing that for you. You're good.
I've got that.
Okay.
Brilliant, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
All right, cool. Thanks, Robert. So let's just rearrange stuff here. Because right before I came on, hey, my audio died, which is great. So, right, yeah, so hopefully, you know, that's kind of piqued your interest and you're thinking maybe, how do I get into writing a web data connector? You know, I know of some API that I want to be downloading, or hey, you know what, there isn't the data connector already built in that list from the community, and you know, got a little bit of background skills in JavaScript, and I think I could maybe tackle this, but I don't know where to start. So when you download the SDK, you will also be able to download a bunch of examples, and one of those examples is just a really simple stock quote connector. So basically putting in a company's ticker symbol and getting their history of their stock price. Okay. Now, what I've gone ahead and done here is I've loaded the stock quote connector into a web page called Simulator. Now, this is delivered with the SDK, and it's basically a way for you to be able to test whatever you've coded in the web browser before then putting it into Tableau. And there's some great reasons for doing that. The main one is really just debugging. It allows you to view errors that have come up in your code much easier, and also you can sort of quickly iterate and develop as you go. So just to show you how this one works, if you haven't tried it before, we could type in Tableau's company name, company symbol, say get stock data. Now that data connector goes off to the background and retrieves the data stocks value for each day going on to the present day, the 5th of November. So what just happened there? Okay, so it seems to have done something magic in the background to bring back that data. Well, first of all, we could take a look at the code to see what actually has gone on. So let's have a look at it. Now, when you open up the code, the first thing you sort of notice is you've got JavaScript functions, and the whole data connector is built on the basis of JavaScript. And maybe you get lost in sort of looking at these functions. What I like to do when I'm looking at a connector from scratch is go straight to the bottom, because right at the bottom of the code is where you write your interface. So all of the JavaScript is in the head tag in HTML. The interface that we get to work with is, of course, in the body of the HTML. And here we see the interface we were presented with, some text that said enter ticker symbol. We then had an input where we could put in data, and then a button which would submit the form to go and get that data set. If we then start to scroll up, we'll see that there are other functions that are related to the interface. So in this case, the author of the connector used jQuery to assign a listener function. So when that submit button is clicked, it'll trigger off a little bit more code, which takes in the ticker symbol value. Okay, so it's pulling in from that text box, trimming it, getting rid of any white space that you might have accidentally put in. And if you have indeed entered a ticker symbol at all, it'll then go off and try and get the data for that ticker symbol. So it sets the ticker using this function, which we'll come to in a sec, my connector, and then submits it to Tableau. Now that Tableau.submit is an important part of the whole process. Essentially, when you load up a web data connector, you initially are in what's called the user interface phase. Okay, so that's the bit where you're presented with various different screens and you can configure and select the data that you want to pull into Tableau. You then move, when you execute the Tableau.submit function, you then move into the second phase, which is the get data phase. Okay, so if we now scroll up towards the top, we'll see that there are some custom functions that have been written. So for instance, for this URL, we need to build a custom query to query URL to pull the data down. All right, and that's done by passing in the ticker symbol and a start date and an end date. And then there's various conversions that are done to convert the date that's been entered into a different types of string. Okay, this is all kind of just relevant to this connector, and it's something that the author has decided to do. The bit that's more generic is the bit in between these connector definition comments, which are the get data part, the get data phase of the web data connector. The first main function is to define the column headers that are in the data table. Okay, so if we move away from code and we think to something we're used to, building a data table, maybe within a database or within Excel, obviously we have the first row of field names, and then we usually define some field types that go along with that. And those are done in two separate arrays that are here called field names and field types. And we have three fields that have been defined, ticker, day, and close. And we have three field types that relate to the same field names above. So string relates to ticker, date relates to day, and float relates to close. And those two arrays are passed into the Tableau API through this headers callback function, which takes in the field names and the field types. Then we actually have to populate the data table. And this is when the connector, if you're opening up someone else's, can get quite complex. Okay, there's usually a lot of parsing going on in here, transforming what might be JSON data from the API into something that we can pass into Tableau. So I'm not really sort of going to go in deep into the bit in between. It's just important to know that however the data comes down, your goal is to get it into an array of JavaScript objects. Okay, so we can see in this they're essentially looping through the results that have been returned from the API using a for loop. And then for each value in the for loop, they build a JavaScript object which has, here called entry, which has 3 values, ticker, day, and close. And if you think it's funny they relate to the column headers, well, that's exactly it. The column headers we have here, ticker, day, and close, get added into this entry, ticker, day, and close. And the values assigned to them from the JSON that's been returned, okay? And then that's pushed into an array here that they've called toRet, okay, the variable that's been assigned to the array. Once that array has been built, all right, so if you can think about this entry here is one row in the data table, and then the array is the collection of all the data rows put together. And then we can pass that array back to Tableau just as we did with the column headers. So the array toRet is passed in. We also have to pass the length of the array, so Tableau knows when it's done building the data table. And then there's this third Boolean value, false or true, which says, is there more data to come? And when you get into sort of writing more complex data connectors where, let's say, there's some paging going on because the API will only return, say, 200 results, then you can use the data connector to say, actually, I'm not done yet. I need you to go back and call the whole thing again to go off and get the second page and the third page and the fourth page. And once you're done changing this from true to false, tells Tableau, right, we're done with all the pages, we've got all the data, and now we can build the TDE. So let's have a look at, we've seen sort of the interface, we've seen the code that drives it, and we've seen the results. Let's see what actually went on in the background. And in Chrome, I'm going to go into the developer tools to have a look at the network tab and see what goes on when I hit this get stock data button. If I reload that, I'm going to type in data again, get stock data. We'll see that URL that was built within the JavaScript code that's going up to the Yahoo API. Okay, it's a GET request against that URL. And then if we hit the response tab here, we can see what comes down. And actually even better is the preview tab because it kind of does some parsing for us. So we can see that it came down with an object called query. It's told us that there are 252 results within that. And here is an object of results and an array called quote. And within that, we can see all of the values that relate to that ticker on that day. What we'll also find, though, in here is there's a bit more that's being returned. So we don't just have ticker, day, and close. We also have things like volume and highs and lows. So what I find to help you sort of get into writing these is to just go in and make a small change to this bit of code, get it to work, understand what it's doing, pick it apart, and then move on to creating your own connector. It's a lot easier and a lot less daunting than just starting with a blank page and trying to figure out how to write your own connector to your own API. And actually, it's just making small tweaks is again a lot better than going off and trying to do like find replace on variable names and on URLs and expecting it to just work. Okay, if you were connecting to a different API, it's a completely different connector. You do need to start from scratch. But if you're just learning, the best thing to do is go in and make tweaks and make the connector a little bit better, maybe rework the interface, maybe rework the data that's being pulled down to just understand how the JavaScript works. So let's go in and do that. Let's add in, say, the volume value. So we can come in here, and the first thing I'm going to do is go to field names, change that to include the volume column, and volume is an integer. And then in the entry here, I'm going to add it on to be parsed out. So again, we'll call it, sorry, I'm OCD for getting everything lined up. Volume, and then it's going to be quotes with the index of II dot, and I believe it was just volume. Yeah, so we can pick that out from the object. Okay, save that off, and that should be good to go with a quick refresh. So let's reload the connector. Get stock data. We now see that new volume column has come in, and it has the integer data type, and it's populated all of the values from the API into that column. Okay, so boom, we've created a new version of the connector. We've enhanced it. We've brought more data in, and you could go through and add in all of the other stuff in here, and then bring it into Tableau. And in fact, you know what? Why don't we just do that now, seeing as we've got a bit of time. So we can go into the web data connector. We now think we've got a great working connector, so let's try it out. Get stock data. I have a strange little bug with my laptop. This is not going to trigger. I might have to do it again. Yeah, let's try it again. There we go, it's working now. So you see now we're in Tableau. We don't really see anything that's going on in the background. We'd have to use a third-party piece of software to figure out what the communication is if something's going wrong. Whereas if we were able to test it within Google, within Chrome, then we'd be able to debug it pretty quickly. And we can now go in and look at that close and the volume for the new data that we brought in. That easy. And so for like 6 months now, I've been writing various connectors. You can find sort of my little repository of them at data.theinformationlab.co.uk. I sort of focused on more kind of the quantified self stuff. So there's Fitbit, Strava, Runkeeper, Moves, and then other ones such as Quandl, ParsHub, which is kind of like import.io, and then Mapbox directions for sort of doing some geocoding and getting travel routes and travel times between various places. What I've found in creating these is there are certain recipes that you build and then you can reuse. So for instance, creating one that works with just sort of open data is a great start, and Quandl was sort of my open data one to do that. Then moving into ones that require a little bit more on the authentication side. So for instance, Fitbit uses OpenAuth 2 to do the authentication, and that was sort of a learning curve again. So that took me to another level, but then once I'd cracked that, I then could write Strava really easily and Runkeeper really easy. Obviously, they've got sort of different challenges, but just sort of being able to reuse the code to do that allowed me to sort of create these a bit more quickly. And then there were sort of nuances between them. So, for instance, ParsHub asks you for what the types of data are that's in the table that you return, because it doesn't know whether it's an integer or a string or a date. So that was again sort of like a second phase interface that I had to build in to allow the user to do that. And I think you'll find that if you do get into writing these connectors, once you've cracked one, then you can build off like 2 or 3 more. You'll find a new challenge, and that will allow you to then build 2 or 3 others again. Okay. That's where I wanted to leave off there. I do go a bit more in depth, or I did go a bit more in depth into building stuff at the Tableau conference. And if you missed that session, it is available as a video to watch on demand. So that would be again a great place to start. Okay, and with that, I'm going to pass across to Tamas.
Great. Here we go. I'm changing over to Tamas now.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Could you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
That's great. So let me share my screen. Let me start with something else. So in the community, there are several ways to not start from scratch this WDC development. There are some frameworks already on the GitHub, so you can find several projects which will create some skeleton and speeds up the creation of the WDC, the web data connectors, the development process. And this is something what I'd like to show, so how it usually works when you'd like to do something from scratch, and what are the different challenges what you can have during the creation of these web data connectors. So let me start from, so let's pick up first a goal. And usually I'm spending my time on the developers.tableau.com. So let's create something, a web data connector which just takes some information, uses the Tableau community's API, get information, and put into Tableau for further analysis. So let's see if I open something like a Google sample connector and check for thread. Here I can search for different tags in the community page, and if I'd like to take the same information in my web data connector, I just have to know how I can interface, where are the API URL, where are the API endpoints in the community forum, and if I know that, then there are really thousands of ways to build the connector itself. So today I just did a very quick Google search and realized that in the community.tableau.com/API core v3, I can search for any tags, like I can search for forum posts which are using, tags with Excel tag or WDC tag, and it really looks like a simple JSON file. So theoretically, we should be able to write something which takes this data in a few minutes. So let me show our framework, and later on I can show what other frameworks on the market, and you can decide if the process of this WDC development is fast or not. So let me create quickly a skeleton project, and to have, let's pick some name. Let's use community, because that's the Tableau community site. So after I create my community project, it will generate a few files like empty connector base. That's where I have to implement my connector processes. Plus, it will generate a template for getting the data. Usually, the Tableau samples came with HTML and JavaScript examples, but usually in real life you don't use HTML. It's 2015, so you are using mostly J templates or other templating engines like HTML or something more advanced. And also, most of the people are using CoffeeScript instead of JavaScript, which is just a synthetic sugar for generating JavaScript code. It can create much more cleaner code than the JavaScript itself. So if you are not really familiar with CoffeeScript, then let me show what's the difference. So this is the same code in Coffee than in JavaScript. And if you'd like to use like a cycle, like for A in 1, 2, 3, and print A, then it will generate the necessary lines in JavaScript, but the whole code will be much more readable than in JavaScript. So that's why we are usually writing our own web data connectors in Coffee. So using this framework, the task is very easy. We have to define first what are the parameters what we are getting from our users, and then we should do the implementation, like how we get this data and how we structure it and how we pass it to Tableau. So let me show how it in real life. So first of all, let's just quickly define what do we need from the user as a input. So let me just change the start Jade template, which will generate the HTML for the web data connector. Let's read the tag information, enter tags, and we can call this input box as tags, and we can define what will be the Tableau data key, so how our connector will get this information during the processing. Let's use tags, and add search for tags separated by comma, like WDC and Google, and this will be our HTML page. So as you see, this will be these are actually divs, and this will generate input control forms, and it's much more readable than the HTML itself. So we are done with the definition of how our connector should look like. Let's first try to build this. And if I build it correctly, then I should see this community HTML. I just have to add the text and it will load the data, but obviously I have to define what should happen when we load the data. So we are done with the user interface. Let's do the business logic. Let's open the community connector copy file, and here we have a few things what we need to do. We have here a few functions or callbacks which needs to be implemented. First of all, we have transitions, like what should happen when we are changing from the start, which is the configuration phase, to run phase, and what should we do when we are actually running our code, so when Tableau executes the code itself. We have the same callbacks also as shown by Craig. So we have to define what should happen when we pass back the rows, and how should we define the columns metadata. Going back here, let's pick a few columns what we like to grab from this location. Let's take the subject, the view count, and the published date. I think that's these are good candidates. So first of all, let's define the column metadata. It will be relatively easy. We need to call only the Tableau's headers callback function, and the values should be subject, view count, and published. We should also add the data types, like the subject is a string, the view count is an integer, while the published is a date, the date time. That's it, so we are ready with the columns. Let's check how should we manage the row, how should we manage the rows, and how should we load the URL itself. First of all, from this tag information, which is in the URL, we have to construct the complete URL. So I would take this URL and say that the data URL should be this one, with one exception, that the tag should came from the form, and the form data is here in the data, so it will be data dot tags. That's it. Right now we have our nice URL. We can log it into the console if we are interested. Why not? So console log data.url, we know it, and practically that's it. The only thing what we need to do right now is to actually give back the rows. So we should take this, we should load this URL, and the framework already added some helper functions, this load URL, which is jQuery Ajax call. It will download the data itself. We know that the format is JSON. However, if you check the first row, this is something strange. This is not JSON. So it seems that we have to start the JSON part from the second row. We should just skip this first row because it breaks the JSON parser. So let's ignore the first row and retrieve that URL. So the data type should be text because we have to just remove the first line. We can say also that the data should be the data without the first line, which is let's search for a line break +1. And here we are. Then let's call back the processor function with this data set, and obviously we have to convert back this to JSON. So going back here, if we take the list, which is the key for the array containing the rows, from the return JSON, our data connector is practically done. So data, and it was list. That was it. So it was easy. It took, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes to write with the user interface, with getting the data. Let's try it. It should work or may not. So the process is to test out, at least in interactive development mode, your connector is to start quickly a web server and open a so-called simulator. This is the same stuff what Craig used to test out the connector. So if I open my web browser and compile my community connector, I should take this URL, add to the tester, and search for WDC. Text is not defined. So let me check what is the error. As you see, I get the connection data, so I know that the text is WDC as I wrote. It seems the URL where we have to take the data looks also good. So we should understand what exactly the problem is in our case. Okay, so it's easy. It seems I forget to double code the text data type. Let's give another type. Let's reload it and see what will be the next issue. As you see, we found another issue, which is the control allow origin header is not present on the requested resource. This is a very typical, very common issue for those web sources which does not allow other websites to connect, which means that by default, the community tableau.com denies every connection attempt made from browsers. But there is also a solution for this kind of issues. So even if the website says that you should not use this directly out of the box from your browser or from Web Data Connector, but using a coarse proxy, we can bypass this limitation and we can interface with this kind of websites, including the community.tableau.com. So let's see how can we fix this security issues. There is a program called Coarse Proxy, which is actually a normal proxy. It's still running on my localhost. It's also an npm package, so you can get it for your node. It's running on this on my computer, and the only thing what I have to do is to go through on this proxy server, and it will add this missing header, which will tell to my browser that it can connect to that remote website, and it will also allow Tableau to connect to that website. So the data overall needs to be completed with this coarse proxy, like this. Let's not forget to rebuild the connector. Let's reload it, clear the log, search again, and it seems that we have the data. So it seems we just built a very nice web data connector within a few minutes. Let's try it from the Tableau itself. So the URL is this one. Nope. WDC. I have the subject and the view count, so it's just beautiful. So this is how usually a web data connector development process looks like from the very beginning to the very end. So like from design to the implementation. And if you are not as crafty jade guide as I am, you can still use grant-based table web data connector generator written by Eric Peterson, and that's also a very easy way to build a connector from scratch, and it will also generate the build environment. It will segregate the HTML from your JavaScript, so it will provide you a much cleaner way to build your own web data connector. All right, that was it, and I'm still proud that I did it in live. I mean, it's cool. All right,
Well, that's great, Tamas. That was a lot of fun to watch. So that's what we have today. We've seen kind of from the beginning, and with the introduction that Robert gave us, and of using some of the other sources out there, and using existing connectors, all the way to Tamas's building it from scratch. So that was a great intro for everyone for the WDC. And you also showed another thing that I didn't even know, that developers.tableau.com goes straight to that developers page in the community. So there's a great resource for folks who are coming in with questions and trying to get going using the web data connector. And then, of course, we have this video, and then the video that Craig mentioned as well from his TC talk that's available to those who went to TC. So that's everything for today. I want to thank everyone for coming. Or thank Tamas and Craig and Robert for presenting today, and for you, the attendees, for showing up. And I will have this video online later today as I record all these videos. I'll record this one and get it up to our community site, as well as getting it onto YouTube later today. Thank you again for attending, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.